Welcome back, welcome back. My next guest is an artist who needs no introduction. Having launched her career in the early 90s, Tracey Emin rapidly rose to fame, becoming part of a group known as the Young British Artists. In 1999, she was a Turner Prize nominee and exhibited My Bed, an installation consisting of her own unmade, unwashed bed. After that, there was no looking back for the ambitious artist who continued to experiment with different forms of art, from sculpture to painting, becoming a professor of drawing at the Royal Academy of Arts in London in 2011. Tracey opened the Turner Contemporary Art Gallery in Margate last year, her hometown, and she'll be exhibiting her show there later this month, her new show, in fact. I caught up with Tracey to discuss what it means for her to be showing in her hometown. Tracey, great to see you. Great to see you. Coming up on May the 26th and so on, in your hometown, this great exhibition and so on, you must be very thrilled about it, but I read somewhere you were quite nervous too.
I'm very nervous and apprehensive. I grew up in Margate. I've used Margate a lot with my work. I'm synonymous with Margate. And it's my hometown. And there's very few artists that have that opportunity of showing in the place where they grew up. And when you've got like the local newspaper calling you, you know, our local daughter returns, there's a lot of pressure to make it good and to make it work. I think it's about as much pressure as there was on me with Venice representing Britain.
Like Venice?
Worse, actually. Yeah, definitely worse.
And this will be more emotional for you even than Venice, yeah.
Well, yeah, when the Turner Contemporary opened in Margate, I was there for the opening and helped cut the ribbon and everything, and I was crying. It was so fantastic to see art be a catalyst, to be able to have the power to change, you know. Margate's been very run down over the last 15 or 20 years, and art now is bringing it back to life. So. Right.
That's very exciting. And is there one or two pieces of art in the show on May the 26th that particularly means something to you? Well,
all of the work means something to me.
Yeah.
I'm also showing with two gentlemen artists, Turner and Rodin.
Yeah.
You know, very much
Just
the establishment.
The old trio together again. Turner, Rodin and Emin.
Yeah, and Rodin, the sculpture, Rodin's Kiss is being shown, which is amazing to have that in Margate. It's a real treat. And the whole thing is that Margate's very evocative. It's a very passionate place. As Turner painted there, it has the most fantastic sunsets. And so a lot of the work is very passionate, a lot of nudes. Nudes by Turner and Rodin.
Is it any more sensitive to be producing nudes, including obviously nudes of yourself and so on, in your hometown? Is it?
I think it is definitely.
Must be a bit.
It is a bit risque, to say the least, but it's following a long tradition of art. It's not a new thing, and by showing alongside Turner and Rodin, people can see it's a progression of an idea. And as I'm a woman doing this, it just means that I've used myself as the model. I've used myself as the muse, unlike a man who uses another woman, which I think is actually probably more questionable.
Yeah, right. And in fact, someone said that, I mean, that sex, in a sense, is the most important abiding theme in your work. Do you feel that, and in your life, obviously?
No, I don't feel that, and especially as I'm getting older. And I say to people, really, I think anyone that's like 50 and over understands this. Even I'm nearly 50. You know, all of this work is really me looking back and knowing that there's been excuse the pun, but a sea change. You know, I'm different now. It's more like looking back onto my youth, looking back onto my past, looking back onto me being, a virile woman, whereas I don't feel those things now. I'm more interested in, I said I'm more interested in love now than I am about sex, definitely. Companionship, love, companionship, warmth, trust, all of those, faith, all those kind of values interest me much more than just a quick fix on anything, definitely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, you said one very memorable quote, I remember, on this very subject. You were saying, I'm desperate to love and be loved. I want my mind to float into another's. Great phrase, that. And then, I want to be set free from despair by the love I feel for another.
Yeah, yeah, that's really true. I really feel that. And as I get older, the love thing, it becomes more intense and stronger, the feeling of warmth, as I said, warmth and trust. And I think when you're younger, you just see things as being very fast, you know, driving fast, moving fast, living fast. And now I want more contemplation in my life, definitely, and it would be fantastic if I could share it with someone.
How many really important loves have you had in your life?
Not including my cat.
Right.
It's my soulmate, yeah, definitely. I think I've had 3 very, very important relationships in my life. But I think my friendships with people is immense. I'm so lucky that I've got such fantastic friends, really, really true friends, friends that I've been friends with for 20, 25 years, friends that I was actually at school with, you know, and I try to move and take people with me, whatever's happening in my life, because you need companionship and you need trust.
Yes, and I mean, in terms of what's different in the way you work, I mean, when your thoughts are on love rather than sex and so on and so forth, how has that therefore changed your work?
I've made I've made some very nice sort of very sweet watercolours of myself and a friend in bed reading. And are really beautiful blue watercolours that are very, very sweet and lovely to look at. And, you know, that's the difference, that's the change, you know. And when I look at these watercolours, to me, they're like snapshots of my life that make me feel warm, that make me feel happy. So there isn't like an aggression or there isn't like an anger, something else is changing. Changing
in your life and so on. And you've covered so many different forms of art in terms of in addition to photography and all of those things and so on. Your main concentration now is what, on the painting?
My main thing now is everything I can do with my own hands.
With your own hands?
With my own hands, yeah. So drawing, painting, sculpture, and the new exciting thing that I started doing is making large bronze sculptures, figurative ones, which I've never done before. All my sculptures before have always been either made out of wood, more like constructions, or very, very tiny things. And now I'm getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so it's a challenge. And also I'm sort of giving myself time to make a mess. And let myself be more free, take more chances, and be more risky with my work. If it doesn't work, then I won't show it. But if I feel it works, then I will show it.
And during your life and during your art, Princess Diana obviously made a big impact on you, and you've brought her into your work too as well, didn't she? She had an impact.
Yeah, I did a series of drawings of Princess Diana. I thought she was a pretty incredible woman, and she stood for some very good, positive things. And I did a really nice series of drawings of Princess Diana. But also, recently, I did a very, very nice drawing of the royal wedding. I've turned out to somehow be some kind of royal artist. I don't know why. And yeah, I mean, the portraits of people, of real people, it doesn't matter whether they're royal. They're real people. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. You've done that as well, and so on, across the whole range. And so, is there anything you haven't done that you really have in mind to achieve?
I would like to make some really large monumental sculptures. That's what I would like to do. Not necessarily for public spaces, but just for myself. And this is an ambition that I have at the moment. All of my ambitions aren't to do with like career necessarily, but they're internal. They're to do with me making and me feeling happy with what I create. And as I'm not married and I don't have children, my creativity is the most important thing to me, what I work towards, which is my future. And it's honing in on that and focusing on that. That's what's most important.
Is one of your regrets that you didn't have children, I guess?
When I'm unhappy, it's a regret. When I'm happy, I don't regret anything, so...
yeah. That's very well put. God, that's very well put. That explains it all. And you said about one work of art, you said that you've done, it's the most feminine work I've ever done. How would you define what makes a work feminine?
Something which could never, ever, ever be made by a man. You just look at the work and you immediately, even if you know nothing about art, you look at the work and you immediately know that a woman's made it.
And you said one thing about people going to your exhibitions and so on and so on, you said, I hope they come out thinking I'm a better artist than when they went in.
Yeah, definitely.
That's your ambition, is it?
Yeah, that's a good ambition, yeah. And I think if all artists had that ambition, the world, or anybody, if all people had that ambition, you know, you get inside a taxi, if you think, he was a really good taxi driver, better than I thought he would be, you know, when I got in, the world would be a better place, essentially.
Tracey, thank you so much. That has been terrific.
No, thank you.
Absolutely smashing.
Thank
you so much. Thanks to Tracey Emin there. And now we turn to a man who courts controversy, an ardent lover of all that's provocative and contentious, a man who once declared, I am hugely prejudiced about everything. Prejudice is what makes the world go round. Strange then, perhaps, you would wonder why this man is one of the most popular, most famous Britons in the world. The television programme he presents has 380 million viewers across the globe. That man is Jeremy Clarkson. This mountain of the motoring world joins me right now. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's a joy to have you. One of the first times you and I ever met was, in fact, on that last Concorde flight.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Which was, of course, ruined because Piers Morgan was also on that flight.
Well, this is a very important point of historical accuracy, because we were told on the plane, and we were in the other of the two identical cabins, and they said, Jeremy has in fact poured a whole bottle of champagne over Piers Morgan. No. Now, in the papers more recently, it just says it was only a glass of water. I suppose for the elegance of Concorde, it ought to have been champagne.
It ought to have been champagne, but I didn't want to waste it.
Yeah.
No, I was. They said you're seated next to the lavatory, which turned out to be Piers Morgan, is what they meant. And he was behind me, and I thought, I knew as our plane landed, because it was the very last Concorde that would land, that there would be a great deal of television cameras and press interest. And I thought it would be amusing if Piers Morgan got off with a wet crotch.
Yeah, right.
Because it would look like he'd had an accident.
Exactly.
So I simply poured some water, just so that he would have a very wet crotch and would be a laughingstock. That was the plan. It worked quite well.
Yes, it did indeed, and it was a very subtle plan.
Yes,
too.
it was.
Yeah.
I didn't want to throw champagne at him. That would be yobbish.
Yeah.
But a glass of water, that was fine.
And you've said about the end of Concorde, which everybody on that plane was sad about, but it was one giant leap backwards.
It was. As I stepped off it, I thought, this is one giant leap back for mankind. I can think of no other time in human development when man has progressed in some way and then gone backwards.
That's right, and progressed, and it succeeded, it worked, then gone backwards.
It's the idea of saying to our grandchildren, you know, we used to be able to go to New York in 3 hours. Yeah. It's my grandfather would say to me, it used to take me 2 days to go from Yorkshire to London. Yeah. Yeah. And he would stay overnight at a hotel because you simply couldn't think of doing the journey in a day. And now, of course, now we're so much faster, and we're going backwards. I can't think of anything else. Well, I suppose it's the space program we're going backwards.
Yeah, it's all the science going in different directions. Well, what about politics, though? I mean, politics is an interesting topic because you've been very... Well, would you be tempted? There was a poll, wasn't there, where 49,446, wasn't it? People voted for the fact that you should be the next Prime Minister.
Yes, I got more votes than Cameron, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, because, I mean, in order to be a politician these days, you have to be absolutely squeaky clean, entirely without any skeleton of any kind in your past. And I'm just riddled with skeletons. I'm just a walking disaster. It would take the newspapers 18 seconds to uncover that I'd committed every crime that's ever been committed. So, no, I know, why would you want that level of intrusion into your life? I can't understand why on earth anybody would go into politics. Why? Because you suddenly find everybody's looking under every stone and interviewing everybody you've ever met and trying to find things out about you. No, leave it alone. It's bad enough presenting a pokey motoring programme.
But at the same time, you said, anyway, the one thing politicians should do is to leave us alone.
Oh, yeah. A politician's job, I believe, is to go into work on a Tuesday. Certainly in a little country like Britain, which has not much to do, or shouldn't be doing much on the world stage, and just say, you know, there's a park bench we need to build. Where should we build it? Oh, there. And then they can go home for lunch. I don't see there's anything else to do, really.
No.
And if they do things, they usually get it very wrong. I mean, it's as a result of political incompetence that we have massive queues at Heathrow and a motorway system that doesn't work. Far better. When they go on holiday in August in Britain, British politicians, and there's no politics happening at all, the country still works. You can still go to hospital, you can still fill your car up with petrol.
And in fact, less happens probably because they're not there.
They're not there, so everything works very well.
Yeah, very, very, very true. Yeah. Where did the love affair with cars begin? How old were you?
Apparently I could say Maserati before I could say mummy. But it went away at the age of sort of 9 or 10, maybe 13, when girls became more interesting, or music or whatever. But then when I was at journalism college, I was a block release from a local newspaper in the north of England. And another kid who was 19, same as me, arrived in this brand new Lancia. And I said, where did you hear that from? And he said, I've got this great gig. He said, if you just do a little piece about cars in your paper, they send you a free car every week, full of fuel and insured, and then they take it away and bring another. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. And here I am. Well, yeah. Not here I am, but, you know, this is what I do for a living.
There you are. Exactly. But, I mean, how many cars have you owned in your life?
Not very many. I don't really buy... I mean, I have two, maybe three now. Three. I don't really buy cars.
No,
my colleagues, James May and Richard Hammond, between them have... I think hundreds, I mean, bikes and cars. They're always buying... I'm basically mean. Yeah. I think, well, I've got a car, why would I want another? It's like these people that have 100 watches. I always think, well, I've got one. Yeah. Nearly tells the time.
And what about the best cars, Jeremy? I mean, for instance, I remember you saying recently about the Czech car, the Skoda Yeti. You said it was possibly the best car in the world, which people were pleasantly surprised that Skoda had suddenly... ascended.
Well, it's a Volkswagen Golf underneath, and it's built by Volkswagen and designed by Volkswagen. It's just the word Volkswagen is crossed out and Skoda written in crayon. It is, if you take everything into consideration, the amount of people you can get in it, how much it costs, how reliable it's likely to be, how fast it goes, how nice it is to drive, and how much equipment you get, it's very hard to make a case against the Skoda Yeti. But I mean, what's the best car in the world? You'd have to take money out of the equation, in which case you end up with either the Bugatti Veyron or the Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Right. What about the Alfa Romeo? You cannot be a true petrol head until you've owned one.
Have you ever had an Alfa Romeo?
No, I've
not a petrol. You have to have owned one, because only then do you understand why cars are as emotive as I think they are. Because an Alfa Romeo has moods. When it's sunny and it's on the right road, it's the most joyous companion you can have. But sometimes in the drizzle, it just decides not to be a car anymore. It has a sulk. And then you can understand that machinery, whether it's Concorde or a space shuttle or a gun or anything, or a watch, can have a soul, can have personality. And there are no cars made that have quite as much soul as an Alfa Romeo.
And what's the definition of soul in that sense? It's just...
You remember,
the vibe or the...
The best way I can describe soul in a machine is when, going back to Concorde, when it crashed, for the first time probably ever, we mourned the loss of the machine almost as much as we mourned the loss of the lives it took. There was a Concorde's crash. There was my hair is standing on end now as I remember the awful footage of it on fire. And of course, it's tragic for the German people on board and for their families. But you can mourn them, but we were also mourning the loss of a machine. And if you mourn a machine, it must mean that it had soul. And therefore, if it has soul, it's not just a plane. I mean, Alfas definitely have it in the world of cars. They just do. Some machines, laptops, do not have soul. No. But some machines just do. Some old steam trains, they definitely have soul. They have a personality.
Yeah, well, bullet trains don't necessarily do.
No, not necessarily, no. They're just a bit too antiseptic.
Yeah. You've been very hard on Rover, of course.
Well, they've gone. And they're deservedly so.
But, do you think you had a hand in that? Yes.
No, no. They were casting around for scapegoats. No, the people who had a hand in it were the weak and useless management through the 70s and the appalling behaviour of the trade unions. And you put those two things together, Rover was doomed. I mean, look now, the Indians have control of Jaguar and Land Rover. Two of the best cars you can buy these days, I believe. I mean, the Range Rover is simply magnificent. The new range of Jaguars, absolutely fantastic. So we've had all those years of them churning out rubbish. And as soon as it goes into foreign ownership, look at Mini, German-owned, Bentley, German-owned, Rolls-Royce, German-owned, all making cracking cars.
But so it's a bit like films in terms of Britain, isn't it? That Britain can produce some very interesting machines, but on the other hand, they're probably funded by...
Almost always. I mean, Aston Martin.
Everyone else.
Aston Martin is still owned. Well, who knows who owns it? The Q80s, I think, last I heard. But there's money coming from abroad into the company, and it makes it just better. We make some great cars in this country now, but all of the profits end up somewhere else.
Generously distributed.
Yes,
generously distributed
absolutely
around the world.
Yeah.
And but more people are interested in cars than ever before, presumably. Well, there are more people in the world, so proportionately.
Well, it's interesting because we do have the emerging markets, the China and the Brazilians and India and so on, where suddenly you are able to buy a car, and that's bound to generate interest. I mean, there's always the need to be practical to start with. I mean, we saw this in Italy in the 50s. You mobilise with the Fiat 500, and that creates an interest in cars, and eventually you start to get interest in cars. I mean, we're seeing that in China now. The practical cars are starting to be usurped, or you're starting to see interesting cars coming along as people think, oh, I want a better car than that. So that fosters an interest, I suppose, in cars and our viewing figures, which are massive.
380 million, we said.
Yeah, I think it was the world's most watched show last year.
Really?
Yeah, which is an accolade.
It is. It's definitely an accolade. And so, what would you say, Jeremy, because things are going so... What's the secret of your success, do you think? We've had the secret of the car success. What's the great secret of your success?
Pure blind luck. I happened to be sitting next to a producer of Top Gear at a party once. That's pure blind luck.
Yeah, yeah.
And here I am. It's been a great I mean, it's a great ride. There's no job I can think of I'd rather do than mine, even though I have to work with Richard Hammond and James May.
Well, you managed to weather that, don't you? Yeah. Well, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
A joy to have Jeremy Clarkson with us, isn't it? And that's about it for this week and this series of Frost Over the World. For the next fortnight, some of the highlights of our recent interviews and so on, and we'll be back in the autumn with a new series. Until then, goodbye for now.
And I'll never forget the hours of ringing her mobile over and over again and not being able to get through because the mobile phone system was down. I remember exactly where I was when I finally did get through, and how pleased I was to hear her voice.
I was of the opinion that this would have been a positive vote for Greece remaining in the euro, but also for the Greeks to say, yes, we will sustain the pain as long as we can make the changes, the bigger changes we want to make Greece a viable economy.
I found a country which had been mismanaged, corruption, no rule of law.
So we call ourselves Movement for Justice. In other words, through justice and rule of law, you eradicate corruption. And it's an idea whose time has come.
The Republicans were hoping that they would already have their candidate by now, because as much as they all fight each other, that's good for Obama.
There was never any ambitions to be like a rock star. That was just ludicrous, you know. So I was just playing it because there's nothing better to do, really.
I loved this exercise of pretending to be somebody else, not surprising in a family of 8 that you would want to escape your own self.
I had a relapse. I went to rehab in wine country just to keep my options open. And then I had heart surgery 2 or 3 years ago. I had a cow valve. I have a cow valve now, which is great because I can crap standing up.